Hey everyone, before I begin, please hit the subscribe button to support my channel. The strategic meeting between the two companies started with polite greetings and the light clink of glasses like tapping crystal together. I stood next to Nathan, close enough to hear every word he said, far enough not to get caught in the image he was trying to build for himself. A VIP guest, an older man who seemed to be an important partner, looked at me and asked politely, "And you are?" Nathan smiled. Not a smile meant for me, but the kind of smile men use when they want to prove they're in control of everything around them. He answered for me. "She's my personal server." I stayed still. No frown, no glance in his direction. I just watched. I watched the way a few people nearby shot quick looks at me and hid a half smile. I watched the way Nathan pushed his shoulders back as if those words made him a few centimeters taller. And in my head, only one thought echoed. He thinks dragging me down will lift him up. No one said anything for those next 2 short seconds. Then another partner asked me in the same casual tone someone might use when asking about a piece of decor. "Have you been in that position long? Do you get paid for it?" Nathan didn't wait for me to answer. He leaned in, lowered his voice, but still made sure everyone could hear. "No, she does it out of respect for me." A few eyes slid toward me again, this time filled with curiosity and a hint of pity. I still didn't speak. There are moments when the strongest reaction isn't a rebuttal. It's a silence cold enough to make the other person unsure of where they stand. To understand how he dared to say that, we need to go back to before this event. Before the party, no one knew who I was beyond my name. I preferred it that way. Staying low-key let me work without spotlights, without people peering into my life. I'm Elena, a strategic investment specialist. My job is to read financial landscapes, negotiate deals, and make the decisions most people won't touch. I don't flaunt my assets. I don't talk about my family's standing in the business world. I believe that what people don't know can sometimes be the shield that protects you. Nathan, my husband, lived the opposite way. He was a mid-level manager, a position just high enough for him to wear confidence, but not high enough for him to step into a room like tonight without forcing it. He always wanted to look more successful than he actually was. Even the way he stood felt like he was acting out a version of success he'd imagined for himself. I remember the first time I met Mr. Donovan, the chairman of Pinnacle, the man in the room tonight. It was at an international conference. I was part of the negotiation team for a major merger. He was the lead on the other side. He didn't talk much, but he watched everything closely. After the meeting, he said only one thing to me: "You see what other people overlook." Nathan had no idea about that encounter. He didn't know I'd worked with the man he was hoping to impress tonight. He didn't know my silence wasn't because I stood beneath him, but because I stood in a world he'd never stepped into. What Nathan was used to was using my work to boost his image. I fixed his numbers. I corrected his documents. I helped him build arguments for his presentations. And he told his co-workers, "My wife just stays home. She doesn't understand business." I didn't say anything. I thought, when two people share a home, helping each other is normal, but over time, Nathan turned that help into part of his identity. He got used to me standing behind him, pushing him forward. He got used to showing off my work as his own. He got used to putting me down to balance the insecurity he never dared to face. The moment he called me a server tonight, I realized he'd gone farther than I ever imagined. And he did it at the most important strategic meeting of the year. A place where a single sentence could change how people saw him. He thought belittling me in front of VIP guests would make him look powerful. He didn't know every word he said was cutting into his own position. I let my eye sweep across the room. The white lights washed over the long table where partnership documents were laid out, ready for the companies to sign. Pinnacle's logo stamped on every hardcover folder. Everything prepared with precision. Tonight wasn't just a party. It was a major turning point in both companies' expansion plans. Nathan was proud to be in that room. He believed he'd be part of this opportunity. He believed that if he impressed the CEO, he'd climb another rung. I looked at him, at the confidence he carried in the moment he thought his life was about to change. Then I said in a voice light as a breeze brushing past glass, "Nathan doesn't know the company you're about to sign with is owned by my family." I didn't say it to threaten him. I was simply stating a truth he never imagined. And that truth on its own was enough to open the rest of the story. Nathan didn't know the company he was about to sign a contract with was owned by my family. I let the word settle, offering no explanation. Because when the truth sits in the right place, it carries its own weight. But to understand why Nathan dared to turn me into his personal server in front of VIP guests, we have to look at how he slowly got used to lowering me bit by bit, like sharpening a blade until it's sharp enough to cut without making a sound. The first cut, it happened during an internal meeting I wasn't in. That morning, Nathan rushed into the kitchen to grab his coffee, saying, "I need to get to the office early. There's an important meeting." On the table was the analysis I'd spent the entire weekend preparing for him. The data, the strategic proposals, the execution plan, all from me. I thought, like always, that he'd tell the truth and say I helped. But that afternoon, I ran into one of his co-workers near a local restaurant. He laughed. "Nathan's analysis this morning was insane. I didn't know he was that meticulous." Said he spent a whole month researching it. I stood still. My heart didn't hurt. Just a cold feeling spreading out like I'd just seen something that had always been there. But I never wanted to admit. Nathan used my work to lift himself up. But when he was praised, he didn't say thanks to the person who helped me. He said he did it alone. And he said it like he never once saw me as someone who could stand on the same level as him. The second cut. A few weeks later, I stopped by Nathan's office to drop something off. I didn't plan to stay, just hand it over and leave. But when I walked past the pantry, I heard voices in the corner. Two of his co-workers. Nathan's wife picked him up yesterday. Yeah, but Nathan said she just does housework. Doesn't know anything about business. Helps him organize paperwork. That's it. I stood behind the glass wall, watching my reflection blur between the layers of light. I wasn't angry at them. They were only repeating what Nathan said. I walked out of the building without texting him. Some things don't need a conversation. They just need to be seen clearly. And I saw something very clearly. Nathan never wanted people to know I was capable. He wanted to keep the image of the competent husband with the wife quietly in the background, even though that picture wasn't real at all. The third cut. The small client dinner the following week made everything even clearer. We went to a dinner with a group of guests Nathan's company wanted to impress. I sat beside him, staying quiet the way he preferred so he could keep the conversation flowing. One guest asked what I did for work. I was about to give a simple answer, but Nathan slipped in first. She doesn't understand business. She's just here for fun. The comment was light enough that the guest thought he was joking, but I heard the tone. He wasn't joking. He wanted to assert his status and he used me as the prop. I set my knife down on the plate and looked at him. Nathan avoided my eyes, turned back to the guest, and kept talking as if he'd just introduced a cute pet, not his wife. On the way home, I said one sentence cold enough to make him look over. "You're not afraid I'll be wrong. You're afraid I'll be better than you." This time, he didn't force a smile. He went quiet. And when someone goes quiet at that moment, it means they know they've been seen for who they are. After that night, I stopped looking at Nathan through the lens of a wife trying to support her husband. I looked at him exactly as he was. He didn't hate my ability. He hated the idea of people knowing I had ability. He wasn't afraid of losing me. He was afraid of losing the status he believed he'd built by keeping me one step lower. Every word he said about me behind my back, every time he claimed my work as his own, every casual dismissal, all of it was proof of that insecurity. While Nathan was busy playing the role of the successful man, I understood what was actually happening behind the curtain. Tonight's event was the biggest of the year, the partnership signing between Nathan's company and Pinnacle, the company Nathan had always dreamed of working with. Rumor inside Nathan's company was that Pinnacle's chief advisor was a European expert, a mysterious figure no one had ever identified. Nathan believed, tonight's my chance. If the CEO notices me, I'll move up. I let him keep that belief, not because I wanted him to dream, but because the truth would fall exactly when it needed to. He straightened his tie in the mirror, smoothed his suit jacket, looking at himself as if he were seeing the future he hoped to reach. And I just stood behind him saying nothing. He didn't know I'd met Mr. Donovan years ago. Didn't know Mr. Donovan trusted me enough to put me in charge of representing Pinnacle in this deal. Didn't know my family was the largest shareholder of the very corporation he was trying to impress. Nathan walked into the event hoping to change his life. I walked in with the calm of someone who already knew how it would end. When I stepped aside for a moment to breathe, my phone buzzed. A message from Mr. Donovan. You're the official representative of Pinnacle. Announcement at the end of the program. Be ready. I stared at the screen for a few seconds. No smile, no surprise, just the feeling of a door opening exactly when it was meant to. I locked my phone, walked back into the room, and watched Nathan in the crowd trying his best to stand out. He didn't know everything was about to flip. Didn't know the noise he was trying to make would disappear the moment the truth was placed on the table. And I, the woman he said didn't understand business, would be the one walking onto the final stage. Mr. Donovan's message was still on my phone when I walked back into the center of the event. Nathan stood among a group of directors, talking with the confidence of someone who thought he'd already scored points. He didn't see me standing a few steps away, quietly watching. Mr. Reynolds, the operations director, glanced at me and politely asked Nathan and her, "What's her role in this event?" Nathan didn't take even a second to answer. He didn't look at me. He just lifted his glass and gave a smile that people often mistake for confidence. "She's my personal server." The words fell light but cold as stone. Not because of what he said, but because of how natural his voice sounded. He was used to saying things like that, used to it to the point he didn't see anything wrong. A female director standing beside me frowned and asked bluntly, "You really treat your wife like an employee?" Nathan laughed, that half smile he used whenever he wanted to pretend he wasn't bothered. "She's used to it." I stayed quiet. Quiet enough for him to hear how hollow his own words were. And as I watched the looks around us, I noticed the first shift of the night. People weren't looking at me with mild curiosity anymore. They were looking at Nathan like they were assessing someone who'd just shown a side that didn't fit the position he wanted so badly. Nathan didn't notice. He was too busy enjoying the attention he thought he was controlling. When the music changed, he turned to me and held out his glass as if giving an order. "Get me a drink." His voice wasn't low. It wasn't a husband asking his wife. It was a boss giving a command to the lowest-ranking employee. A young staff member nearby let out a laugh and pulled out his phone to record it. Maybe he thought it'd make a funny little internal clip. The boss telling his wife to fetch his drink. They didn't realize they were recording a moment that would shift Nathan's place in the company. I didn't react right away. I just looked at the glass he handed me like I was looking at evidence of his misplaced confidence. I took it and walked toward the bar, not because I was following his order, but because I wanted to see how long his performance would run before the ending arrived. I walked back slowly. No one said anything. No one stepped in. The silence in the room felt like a sheet of clear glass, letting me see everything more sharply. Every look, every awkward smile, every person pretending they hadn't just witnessed the way Nathan proudly lowered me in front of them. I set the glass down on the table right in front of him. Not hard, not soft, just steady enough to give the moment some weight. Then I stood up straight, looked him directly in the eyes. No anger, no shaking. I said one sentence sharp enough to cut the air and cold enough not to turn into a fight. "You're not putting me down. You're just showing everyone your own insecurity." Nobody laughed now. Nobody spoke. The whole group went so quiet I could hear ice tapping the side of a glass at a table nearby. Nathan raised his eyebrows, mouth parting like he wanted to say something, but he didn't get the chance. The stage lights came on. The music stopped. The host walked up, voice ringing through the microphone. Please welcome the chairman of Pinnacle, Mr. Donovan, to introduce the lead representative for tonight's deal. Nathan immediately adjusted his suit jacket. I watched him pull his shoulders back, stand tall, ready for the moment he thought would turn his life onto a new path. But real life doesn't wait for someone to be ready. Mr. Donovan walked onto the stage. He looked over the room, his eyes passing over every face until they stopped on me. Not a glance, not an accident, a full stop. He spoke into the mic, his voice sharp, clear with no extra words. Elena, please come backstage to prepare for the announcement. The entire room seemed to miss a beat. Nathan turned to me, eyes wide, as if the woman he'd known for 4 years had suddenly become someone completely different. The glass in his hand tilted slightly. He couldn't say a word. A director standing near him whispered, "Elena? Which advisor is that?" But I didn't answer. I didn't need to. I walked past Nathan, past the group of directors, straight toward the path lit by the stage lights. I didn't look back. I didn't want to see his face in that moment because I knew only 3 things would be left in his eyes. Confusion, fear, and the realization that the role he'd been performing had collapsed right in front of the most important person in the company. I reached the backstage door. The event manager pushed it open, gentle but firm, and I stepped through, leaving behind the man who had just called me his personal server in front of dozens of people and who now had no idea what to call me at all. The sounds backstage echoed softly, like metal brushing lightly against metal. I stepped up the stairs leading to the stage, feeling the lights ahead grow stronger with every breath. When I reached my mark, Mr. Donovan looked at me for 1 second, the look of someone who knew he had placed everything exactly where it needed to be at exactly the right moment. Then he turned back to the mic, his voice steady. The new ownership representative of Pinnacle, Elena. No music, no effects. Those 3 words were enough to pull the air out of the entire room in a single beat. The whoosh of the air conditioner was the only sound before whispers burst across the audience. People turned at the same time. Hundreds of eyes locked on me as if they'd just witnessed a reveal more shocking than any deal on the table. And in the middle of them, Nathan. He could barely stand straight. His shoulders dipped, his mouth opened, but no words came out. I watched his face shift from confusion to horror. It wasn't the fear of losing his wife. It was the fear of someone realizing that the image they'd spent years building had been stripped away by a single sentence. I walked up to the mic, not rushing, not trying to look powerful. Real power doesn't need to be performed. "I'm very happy to be here tonight," I began, my voice steady and firm. "This partnership isn't just a signature on paper. It's a long-term direction for both sides." I looked around the room, the faces of directors, advisors, department heads, all of them staring at me, the person they once thought was just tagging along for fun. I continued. "We chose this company not by chance. We chose it because of its real potential and the way your team handled challenges over the past 2 years." Not one sentence mentioned Nathan. Not one word acknowledged the insult he had just thrown. That was the coldest blow. Not pushing him down, letting him fall on his own. When I finished, I stepped back from the mic. Mr. Donovan shook my hand, then moved on to the next part of the program. The host returned to begin introducing the partnership documents, but the room wasn't fully focused on the ceremony anymore. They kept glancing toward Nathan. Whispers spread across the room like a sharp, thin wave. I heard he called her a server. Really? In front of everyone. I saw the video. He told his wife to get him a drink. I glanced at the group of young employees who had filmed earlier. They were passing the phone around, their faces a mix of shock and discomfort. One of them said loud enough for a few nearby tables to hear, "If the boss sees that clip, he's done." Nathan looked at them with a familiar expression. The look of someone who knows he's become the subject of the room's gossip, but can't control where the story goes. He started moving slow, unsteady, and then he did exactly what I knew he would. He tried to push his way toward the stage. Elena, he called out softly, but his voice slipped with panic. He reached out as if he wanted me to grab his hand, as if I were the one person who could save him from being exposed in front of his superiors. A security guard stepped in front of him, firm. "Sorry, sir. This area isn't for uninvited guests." Nathan tried forcing a weak smile for the people watching, like he was hoping to turn this into a harmless misunderstanding. He said to the guard, "I just want to go congratulate my wife." But the faces around him told a different story. No one believed him. A director nearby said quietly, "The wife you called a server, right?" Nathan heard it. He looked away, eyes turning red. Not from being ashamed of what he did to me, but from being ashamed in front of them. He looked at me again, searching for something. A signal, a glance, some explanation he could cling to. But I stood straight, held my place on the stage, and kept my eyes from meeting his. My silence in that moment was the final blade, not cutting him, but letting him see he'd already exposed himself completely. Then suddenly, one of Mr. Donovan's assistants appeared behind Nathan and touched his arm lightly. "The CEO would like to see you in a private room to discuss your conduct during the event." The words were soft, but they froze him. He turned to me, eyes wide, breath uneven, like someone watching the only door that could save him start to close. "Elena, can you come with me?" A desperate whisper so small only I could hear it. I looked at him for exactly 1 second, just one, enough for him to hope I might respond the way I always had, the way I used to stand behind him and lift him up. But that ended the moment he called me a server. I said, my voice low but sharp, "No, this is a conversation between you and the truth." The assistant nodded at me, then guided Nathan toward the hallway. He kept turning back, waiting for me to change my mind. I didn't. I didn't remind him of anything. I didn't follow him into the room where Mr. Donovan was waiting. I just stood there under the lights, saying nothing, letting him face the consequences he created without me standing behind him anymore. The ceremony ended. Guests started leaving the hall, some still whispering about the announcement, mixing restrained laughter with glances no one wanted to explain. The lights dimmed as the event lighting softened. I stood at the edge of the room, keeping distance between myself and the soft chaos of those murmurs. I knew Nathan would look for me. People who rely on their own illusions always look for someone else to pull them out of reality. And of course, his voice came from behind me, rushed enough to show his panic. "Elena." I turned. Nathan stood a few steps away, his suit wrinkled at the shoulders from gripping it too hard. His eyes were red, not from remorse, but from humiliation. He didn't know where to hide. He hurried toward me, forcing a smile that came out crooked. I was just joking. Back then, I didn't think everyone would take it the wrong way. You really surprised me." I let him speak. I stayed quiet. No interruptions, no nods, no softening. Nathan looked at me more confused when he realized I wasn't reacting. He swallowed, then tried again. "I just wanted to look a little more impressive in front of them. I didn't mean anything toward you." He said it like everything could be undone with a simple excuse. Like calling me a server in front of a room full of people could be erased with "I just wanted to look impressive." I looked at him, not angry, not hurt, just clear. Nathan had never apologized for what he did. He only apologized for being seen. I took half a step toward him, just enough for him to think I was finally going to say something close to forgiveness. Then I spoke, my voice steady and cold. "You didn't lose me tonight. You just lost the mask you've been wearing." I didn't need to raise my voice. When the truth sits in the right place, it's heavy on its own. Nathan froze, staring at me as if someone had pulled all the air out around him. He tried to reach for my hand. I stepped back, small, but enough for him to understand the distance between us was no longer physical. He called out, "Elena, don't leave me here like this." But I wasn't there to soothe him. Not tonight. Not after everything that had come to light. I turned away without looking back. My heels echoed on the event floor. Each step steady, each step confirming I no longer stood in the role he had always tried to place me in. Nathan stayed behind in a room still lit with warm yellow lights, but cold as an empty hall. He'd lost face in front of his superiors. Lost the promotion he believed was already within reach. And not because I punished him, but because he exposed his own smallness at the exact moment he needed composure the most. I didn't turn around to see his reaction. I didn't need to. I already knew he was standing there alone, swallowed by a mix of regret and shame. After the event, I went back to my work, calm as if there was nothing to celebrate and nothing to regret. The next day, I had an online meeting with Pinnacle's international division. No one mentioned Nathan. I didn't either. A few weeks later, when the deal was officially signed, the internal report stated clearly, Elena, ownership representative and strategic operator. Not a single line referenced Nathan. He faded into the background like someone whose name didn't belong in the story. In one meeting, a colleague asked if I planned to introduce Nathan to the executive board. I simply said, I don't bring personal matters into work. Then moved on to the next item. His name was never brought up again. I didn't need him to admit defeat. Didn't need him to apologize. Didn't need any dramatic conclusion. When someone exposes their own character in an effort to look powerful, the rest isn't my job. That weekend, I sat in my private office as the sunset spilled through the glass. The city below looked smaller, each window lighting up like accents on a wide canvas. I closed the documents and looked at my reflection in the glass. I didn't beat anyone. I just stood where I was meant to stand. And that was enough. I ended the story with a line I've always believed in. Sometimes the truth doesn't need protection. It finds its own way to become the perfect counter-strike. What do you think about someone exposing their own nature just to look powerful? Share your thoughts below. I want to hear your perspective on situations like this. Thank you for staying with us. Support the channel with a subscription and a like. We truly appreciate every bit of encouragement from you.